Welcome to The Brief. I'm your host, Maya Plants. Today we interview Diane Richards from the United Nations Trade and Development Agency. We spoke about how they are working with governments in sub-Saharan Africa to support them in their digital transformation, the digital transformation of public services. Thank you for listening and watching, and don't forget to subscribe.
I work for the UN Digital Government Programme, and what we do is we help governments simplify and digitalize administrative procedures so that, for example, people can create businesses from their mobile phone without having to go from one government office to another, taking several days, sometimes weeks, queuing up and realizing they have the wrong papers and so forth. So our aim is to make it much easier for people and businesses to transact and deal with the government and get what they need from government, and make it easier for government to become more efficient and effective and to reach more people. So to do this, we've created a platform, a digital government platform. It's a system that has been developed over the years that is aimed at helping civil servants who don't have IT knowledge, right? I mean, the basic knowledge on how to use a computer, how to use common programs, but are not IT trained or software trained. And what we do is we help them, we've made the system so that any of these people can create their own digital online services and then publish these and then actually make them work. So, for example, if you want to create a business, we help people at the business registry create a digital business registry. And our platform allows civil servants at the business registry to create their own forms, to first of all analyze the information they need, to create their own forms, to set conditions about which documents to upload, to connect to a payment platform, and to map out the approval process. Perhaps someone has to check the document, someone has to approve, someone has to give the final go-ahead, and then to create the certificates that will be issued and to make that as automated as possible. So this is already present or being developed in about 20 countries at the moment. And it means, for example, I'll just give an example in Benin. Since we launched, the number of businesses that are now being registered has tripled, simply because it's so easy to do it from your mobile phone. You scan your documents, you fill in one form, and you make your payment. And within 2 to 3 hours, you get all your company documents from the government. So this is something that we couldn't dream of years ago. And I think some countries still don't have that, right?
Some developed countries is more difficult. You actually have to go to the office with a piece of paper.
Exactly.
I don't want to name names, but in Switzerland. But anyhow, so you're working with 20 countries in sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa as well?
So we're working North Africa, Middle East, Asia, Latin America as well. So in different parts of the world. Our system is also being used by the government of Estonia too. That's a country that's very advanced on this, and we've collaborated a lot with them as well.
Right, they have an amazing e-governance system in place, right? The envy of the entire world.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually have a system that's, in terms of what we wanted to do is learn from that and have a system that civil servants can create their own services. So instead of having to contract IT companies to create those kind of systems, that we make it as simple as, well, not, but the similar approach as designing a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. Something that with a bit of training is accessible to everyone. And that's the idea. And it also means that once the system is launched, those same civil servants can update their services if the law changes, if they want to make improvements, add new services. So Bhutan, we started with a service for registering small companies. And now we have the ministry is now putting all its economic service, the Ministry of Economy is putting all its services online. So using the capacity, the training that is now present within the ministry and using our system. So that's our approach. And just to give an impact, I mentioned Benin, but also something we noticed is, for example, in Bhutan, many more women entrepreneurs are now registering. Again, perhaps because by making it online and because they're very busy, they can now do that, something which may have been more difficult before. And we're seeing similar patterns in other countries. And then in Mali, we're doing something slightly different. Mali is a country where it's hard to import genuine medicines directly from the manufacturers or from authorized distributors, simply because the licensing to import or distribute or manufacture locally pharmaceuticals is so complicated. So we're helping the Ministry of Health to simplify that, to avoid the current situation where you have parallel imports, you have counterfeit medicines, you have expired medicines coming into the country, there's no traceability. So in order to we're simplifying it so that Malians, it will be much easier for them to access real medicines from official sources. So that's another example. In Colombia, we're working with the Ministry of Environment to make it easier to register for if you're emitting a lot of carbon or if you're taking carbon out of the atmosphere, to make that all online and simple. And we're hoping to work with them on environmental permits and things like this, which is something which when you want to develop infrastructure or buildings or factory or something like this, environmental clearance is an important step, but it's something that can be very slow and long and can have a negative impact on investment. And we're seeing this in a lot of countries. So we're trying to simplify that as well. So that is what we do and why we do it in terms of development impact. Now, what we've been doing with AI is to try and see how this AI can be used to make our work easier and how it can be used so that we can be more productive. So we've tried two approaches, again, with generative AI, and bearing in mind that a lot of what's out there, all these different platforms are very similar. That's what we've discovered, one thing. So we try two things. We said, often when we develop these registries, business registries or different digital services, there's a certain amount of work which is fairly similar each time. So if we're working with civil servants to help design services so that they can create their own online services, perhaps we can use AI to help them to create services more quickly by telling the AI, create me a service that does this, and giving those details in a sort of sophisticated prompt. And that would come out then with a service. So we tried that for a while. Now, what we discovered was...
So you're saying that the roadmap, let's say if you're going to create a website for a government agency that needs forms A, B, C in order to have a process of approval to create a new business, you would give prompts to the AI to make that roadmap for the developers.
Correct, yeah, to create that whole service, yeah. So we've tried that. But one thing with generative AI is it's very context-based, right? So it looks at what's out there and then uses statistical methods to predict how to develop something based on what it's seen elsewhere. And what we've seen with that is that every time you ask it to do something, even if you ask it to do the same thing, it will do it differently each time. Because this is how AI learns and large language models learn. And this is perhaps, that is not really appropriate or helpful in a way, because we want something that delivers the same thing each time.
Right, you would improve on what is already made, and the AI will just pick again randomly.
Correct. It starts from zero each time. It doesn't learn in that sense. It can't reason either. So it can't, as humans can. It can't necessarily predict. It can't necessarily plan. So we tried quite a lot with current existing LLM models, including with Claude, DeepSeek, and all the others. But
yes, you try everything, right? Yeah. That's available in order to see which one can respond better.
Yeah. And so what we concluded is perhaps that's not the best way to use AI. What we then started looking at is if we look at areas where there's more context, more data, can we train AI to be helpful there? So here we've been looking at, for example, if you're operating our system, so you're an administrative officer, you receive the form with the information, it's all online, but you'll see it on your screen, you'll see the documents, and we can train the system so that when the operator looks at that, the AI can already do a quick scan and say, compared to previous applications like this, which, for example, have this kind of information in, have tended to be accepted by your colleagues. So it's, let's say, a low risk bucket. And therefore, that can help operators move more quickly through those. And conversely, it can flag and say, applications with this kind of information is something where There have been issues in the past, and you may want to look more carefully at this area or that area and guide the operator to that. I mean, obviously, the operator still takes the decision and is still responsible, but AI assists. Another area we're looking at is to then analyze. If you look at, like, for example, in Benin, we have 90,000 companies being created a year, so you have a lot of data. So to go through that data and to see where are areas where, if we look at how all the different steps of approval that these 90,000 applications went through, to look at where are areas where, for example, it's almost, it's 95% to 100% chance of being approved. And then to ask to analyze that and say, are there steps or approval steps that could be removed because they're just a waste of time, let's say, because in all cases they're being approved, versus certain areas where you can see there's genuine consideration. So this is something that we're also working with AI and that we believe can be quite good. And again, that's something that will simplify, reduce the time, and could be applied in various complex situations. And then a third area we're looking at is for people who are filling in the form, right? And to say, so for example, if you ask for an authorization or provide information that is perhaps borderline, that may complicate things, that it could actually tell you, listen, if you ask for this, most people ask for this, gets approved. People who ask for that, they may need to provide additional information or justification, and this is the kind of justification that can be helpful in order to getting your approval. And by doing that, it makes the process faster because the user provides the information that the government finds helpful, and the government officer on the other side can say, okay, actually, now I don't need to return the file to the user and say, please provide more information. They've already provided the information I need, and based on that, I can make a final decision. And this becomes useful, particularly once you get into environmental permits, construction permits, in areas where there's a lot of issues, a lot of subjectivity, a lot of considerations, a lot of people involved. This can be a very useful approach. But again, the user who submits the application is ultimately responsible for what they submit, and the operator who makes the decision is ultimately responsible for what they approve. So for now, this is where we see different areas. We're also looking at AI, using AI to develop certain very defined applications. So for example, how do you creating performance dashboards and things like this. So that we can help the agencies that use our system to monitor what is working well, what is taking a long time, where there might be slip ups, but also to analyze the data and see, are they reaching out to enough young people, to enough women, to enough people from this part of the country or that part of the country? If we tweaked the rules a few months ago, has that increased or decreased the number of people coming and using our service? And is there therefore a policy implication for this that we should recommend to the lawmakers in terms of how they change the law? So to analyze what's happening and to provide and to help them, create policy recommendations. So I would say this is where we're working on developing and where we see the most promise.
Yes, excellent. So it seems like you are completely immersed in the programs. So you are working still with the United Nations Trade and Development Agency, I understand.
Yes.
Yes, this is a part of the programs that are sponsored by which countries are supporting these programs?
So we're partly funded by the regular budget, as it were, but we also rely on generous support of the Netherlands. We've had it from France in the past, from Germany, from the European Commission. So these are and from the World Bank. These are our main sponsors.
Oh, excellent. Yes, of course. And it makes sense also that so many technology companies participate too. Do they participate in some way? They are the ones providing the support, right? In the backbone, the infrastructure, I imagine. Because that's one question that I hear often related to the sub-Saharan Africa or any other parts in the developing world is the question of infrastructure, right? From basic electricity to actually cables and so on, or satellites now. So do you have cooperation with any particular technology companies too that are working with you?
So it depends. So our system is cloud-based. and it's cloud-based because we feel that's in the end more secure. But obviously, where governments have laws on how data is stored, for example, then they would need to, and we would help them collaborate with local companies in terms of data storage, server maintenance, and so forth. Payment platforms tend to be local. So each country has their own payment platforms, which are approved according to their own e-commerce or central bank laws and so forth. So that's something where we're working with local providers. Our system, remember, our system is designed to be usable directly by civil servants, so without needing to use programmers. And I think this is a sort of evolution as we're seeing in many parts of software in terms of platforms and software service. So we don't necessarily collaborate with local software or programmers or coders, but in certain countries, we do have implementing partners who help us as well. And you were talking about technology and things. So what we also try to do is to make so that when a user is applying for government service, to make it as technology light and simple as possible. So you can do it from your phone, which regardless of the infrastructure is generally the one thing that works the best in many developing countries. So you can do it from your mobile phone using mobile credit, mobile money. These are things which are sort of geared most towards the countries that we work with.
Yes, excellent. Because of course, and also e-commerce has been quite developed in some ways, right? I remember the example of M-Pesa. No, there is a system of payments, peer-to-peer payments, transfer of payments, right? Which is quite advanced and started with people just using their phones to exchange current, payments between each other. People who would go to the markets, right? And then, of course, a technology company came up and sort of provided more infrastructure to the whole process, because there is a lot of inventiveness and creativity and innovation happening in some ways, right? In terms of how people use the technology, right? They will show you the way, right? How they
exactly. So we're neutral about that because each country has their thing. So Kenya, obviously, there's M-Pesa, which, as you mentioned, started as a way to send phone credit to your members of your family, especially if you're living in town. You send phone credit to your relatives back home who might not have an income, so that we could speak to each other. And then look at how it's grown. But yeah, we integrate these kind of platforms wherever they exist locally. So we're open to whatever system is out there.
Technology agnostic.
Yes.
Company is agnostic. All right, very well. Anything else to wrap it up? In terms of the work you're doing, you are based in Tunis now, and anything else that you'd like to?
Yes, I mean, we're moving from actually helping individual agencies or ministries develop services. We're now focusing on doing whole of government approach. So we're going to be starting working in Benin very shortly, working with the digitalization ministry so that our system so we train them to use our system and to go on to train people in all ministries and agencies in the Benin government to use our system. So our system would then be the backbone of the government of Benin's digital government system. And this is an area where we're sort of going into now, so providing this digital public infrastructure, as they call it. And another area is we're seeing an increase in bilateral infrastructure arrangements between countries. So, for example, a lot of Middle Eastern countries, partly through their sovereign wealth funds and for other reasons, are doing bilateral agreements with other developing countries and developed countries to invest in infrastructure. I think partly because it also gives long-term returns, which is something that they're looking at post-oil. And obviously, when you talk about infrastructure development, you talk about permitting. And when you talk about permitting, you talk about friction and you talk about delays. And this is an area where we're going into to help countries that are receiving that kind of investment to make it much easier for infrastructure to get the relevant permits. Obviously, the permits have to follow the rules and the laws, and the environmental needs need to be respected, but to speed that up. So that on the one hand, the recipient countries get the infrastructure they need. On the other hand, the investing countries are able to fulfill their investment needs and to get the returns they need as well. So this is an area, particularly as cooperation between countries moves perhaps from multilateral to bilateral, it's an area where we feel we can still be helpful.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for this update. Amazing to know how much is happening that we don't hear often here, right, in the capital, in the capitals, New York, Geneva, Bonn.
In headquarters. Yeah.
But lots of good work happening on the ground.